How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 2. We're beginning the run into madness. So, in this storyline, we are, like, while the ceremony's happening, we ended up sneaking with Shion and, gosh, I can't remember their names. It's the guy who gets killed and the girl who vanishes. Like, I'm so sorry I keep forgetting their names. I really shouldn't, but, like, I just do, okay? But we're here, we're investigating this, like, warehouse that's on the temple grounds. It's guarded, has a double set of doors, and it looks like it's full of what looks like torture implementations, which is just great. And we're now about to be given a kind of history lesson again. I stopped last time because I felt like we were going to be going into something. I bet you this explanation won't be very long, but we still have to wrap up the festival day itself and probably see some tips. So I imagine that would be just a good place to break, because otherwise the episode is going to go really long, and I just didn't have the means at the time to continue it. So yeah, we're going to wrap things up here, see how it goes. But yeah, the fun times are over. It won't be fun anymore, because that's exactly how the first game went. And so now it's time to be paying attention, because hopefully we'll get some clues. And I feel like the big clues are going to be about the vanishing, because last game the focus was more on, like, the murder. The second one seems to be giving us information about the rituals, at least involving the people who just get vanished, which involves them being strapped to some kind of device that helps them slowly sink into the swamp over the course of 3 days, which is horrifying to think about. Anyway, let's jump right into it, shall we? After confirming that I was going to be quiet and listen, she began to speak softly, like a kindergarten teacher reading a picture book.
昔々、ある山奥の村にね、沼があったの。
She really is like reading it like a kindergarten school teacher.
その沼はね、底なしの深い深い沼でね、地の底の鬼の国につながっていたんですって。
The rumor said it was deeper than the ocean, that anyone it swallowed would sink into the underworld, a bottomless swamp. Its name was Onikakushi. Onikakushi. Wait, I thought back to the story I heard yesterday about the sacrifices sinking into the bottomless swamp. Could that be the swamp she's talking about?
ってことは、その村はHinamizawaですね。
察しがいいわね。そうよ。当時は鬼ヶ淵村って呼ばれてたけどね。
Yeah, so it's called that village. And the other thing too is, like, where is this swamp? We've talked about this swamp. I'm guessing there must be a swamp nearby, but, like, we've never ever, like, learned anything about it. Just that it exists, but it must be close.
鬼ヶ淵村。物騒な響きのある名前だな。
Yeah.
イメージもあったんでしょうね。明治の頃に今の名前に改称されたって聞きました。
The name of the swamp connected to hell was called Onikakushi, which meant the demon's abyss. And the name of the village, Hinamizawa, was Onikakushi Village.
村人たちは鬼の国、つまりは地獄のことね。
Not ominous at all.
鬼の国とつながるという沼を崇めながら過ごしてきたの。でもね、ある日のこと。
Oh, whoa. Look at that art. That's terrifying. Demons began to appear one after the other from deep within the swamp. The villagers feared. The hell was overflowing. The demons mercilessly attacked the villagers. They could only watch in fear. They could do no more than hide themselves and tremble.
で、誰かが鬼を退治するわけですか？
That's gonna be Oishi. No, not Oishi. It's what's the name of the god, right?
残念だけど、このお話には桃太郎みたいな正義の味方は登場しないわ。
じゃあ、村を挙げて戦うわけですか？
まさか、村人たちに鬼と互角に戦える力などあるわけもない。
じゃあ、村を捨てて逃げるしかないですよね。
それも無理ね。村人たちにとっても、村は大切な郷里だったから。
Yep, so instead you make a deal.
どんな恐ろしい鬼が攻めてきたからといって、簡単に逃げ出せるはずもなかったのよ。
じゃあ、どうするんですか？滅びるしかないじゃないですか。
Unable to fight, unable to run, all they could do was wait for the village to be destroyed. Then, when everyone had lost hope, their god, Oyashiro-sama, descended unto them.
なるほど。つまり、天からやってきたお社様が、鬼たちをやっつけるわけですか。
No, he tamed the demons. I'm guessing that she's gonna say that no, the demons joined the village.
ケイちゃんは男の子ですね。
Well, that's true, he is.
すぐに腕力で解決する方に走るんですから。
Shion sighed, a little annoyed. Embarrassed, I held my tongue.
お社様はね、やっつけるとか、そういう暴力的な神様じゃなかったの。
Yeah, he feels sadistic, not violent.
もっと優しい、慈愛のある神様だったの。
That's not the Oyashiro that we know. The strength of Oyashiro-sama descended from the heaven couldn't be compared to that of the demons. They didn't even fight, they simply prostrated themselves before his radiant authority. Oyashiro-sama urged them to go back to hell from whence they came, but the demons wept and challenged him, saying they could never return.
鬼たちの世界にも厳しい戒律があってね。彼らは地獄を追放された鬼たちだったんですって。
Demons, who didn't have a place to go, neither in hell nor in the human world. Of course, they were at fault for attacking the village. They deeply reflected on it and were sorry.
村人たちも話を聞くうちに少しずつ気の毒になっていったわ。
Uh-huh.
それでね、村のみんなで話し合った結果、鬼たちと一緒に住むことを決めたの。
There's a lot of good evidence in history that stories about demons are stories about people, but people who no longer behaved like people. A good example of that would be people who turn to cannibalism, get a taste for it, who then hunt other humans as sources of food and sport. I imagine that a lot of times people referred to them as demons wearing human skin because they didn't behave in a way that seemed right. And then over time they get twisted into these abominable creatures. But the reality, the foundation of the truth is based around humans who doing unspeakable evils. These demons maybe wouldn't even be as far along as, like, if it's based on people and we take like the mythology out and look at it objectively, I would say that there's a good chance that these demons were maybe, even if they're not to the level of cannibals, could be things like maybe they were AWOL soldiers. You know, they were forcibly recruited. They got terrified of like watching people die in war, and so they ran away and became bandits. They could be criminals who were able to escape from prison. They could be people who just got a taste for killing and were kind of going like basically being a serial killer. But back in the day, you know, there's not like forensics or anything, so they would just ambush people and kill them because they wanted to. And then when they talked about them being brought into the village after they like, you know, felt bad and seemed to repent, they bring them in and adopt them just as people and then protect them, you know, try and hide their crimes. That's a much more believable, realistic story, like a realistic version of where this story could have come from.
退治するとか追っ払うっていう昔話は多いけど、共存ってのは確かに珍しいですね。
ですよね。鬼ってのは元来諸悪の象徴のはず。それとの共存を決めたというお話なんだから、本当に変わってます。
When the demons first heard the villagers' invitation, they doubted their ears, but soon burst into tears of joy. The villagers had given them a place to live. It was said that in the payment for this good deed, the demons shared their many kinds of power and secrets with the villagers. Yeah, so again, it's like they were given forgiveness, so they probably, I would guess that the reality of a story like this would be that they were criminals who were given a second chance and like offered to protect the village in return, because like where they once had been denied a home and probably thought they'd never be accepted again, they were accepted. And that after living in the roughs and kind of like putting aside their humanity, it would be seen as like one of the greatest, you know, joys that you could ever experience, to be allowed to be brought back.
お社様はその微笑ましい交流をとても喜んでね、鬼たちが村人と分け隔てなく暮らせるよう人間の姿を与えたんですって。そして自らも地上にとどまり、末永く両者の交流を見守ることにしたんだそうよ。
But if it were real, and so there were demons like intermingled with people, then it would mean that the people in Hinamizawa would be descendants of and likely related to demons, each and every one. A land in which man, demon, and god lived together. I thought the word demon was a noun meaning evil that needs to be exterminated. A god may have mediated for them, but you don't often hear happy endings like that where both sides live in harmony. I see. I guess it is kind of interesting.
普通のおとぎ話ならここで終わりなんだけどね。このお話は江戸時代にだいぶ加筆されたみたいで、まだまだ続く随分と長い話になってるわ。
I think I know where this part's going to be too. My prediction is that, remember, the whole idea is that like there's demons living within the village, and the whole idea is that the demons will sometimes do things to protect the village, and everyone else is supposed to like not get in their way, and to not interfere, and to not rat them out. And the demons being part of this, like, you know, the cult group I was talking about, who do these terrible things, like the murders. And the rest of the village, even if they're not directly involved, they, like, have a tradition of, like, not interfering. After that, the humans and demons intermixed, and eventually there was no difference between them.
鬼の存在は結局村に溶け込んで消えてしまったということですか？
いいえ、消えたりなんかしないです。半分はしっかりと残ってたそうですよ。
The knowledge the villagers have received from the demons basically made them into something inhuman, what people called transient. They were well aware their power they had was heresy, and those below worshipped them. They lived out their lives in secrecy.
このお話がね、その後に派生するたくさんの昔話。だからこのお話がある意味基礎中の基礎。
So she's saying it's a local significant story that bleeds into other areas and other stories.
ベーシックね。
原点ってどういう意味ですか？
村人たちは鬼の血を引いているという部分ですね。つまりこの辺りに伝わる様々な伝承や昔話は全部その村の人たちは鬼の血を引いているというのが前提になっているんです。
Right, and that's what we were hearing last time. There was a hint of amusement in Shion's face as she said that. It was like she wanted to say that she too had demon blood in her. Is there any proof, though? Maybe it's somehow rooted in historical fact beyond just fairy tales? Like I said, like that would be my interpretation, my guess, my very amateurish guess is, again, I don't buy the curse. I think the curse is the faith of the people that believe in the curse. Like that's the manifestation of the curse, is that there are people who believe in it so much they're willing to enact it and bring it about. So I still think it's all just people. And if that's true, then like my take would be that there are people who are descendants of some of these more violent and terrible people from back in the day.
あら、じゃあ前原くんは沼から鬼が現れて人間と交わったっていうのは本当にあった出来事だって信じてるのかしら？
I'd be like, my answer would be like, well, yes, I assume that the demons were just other people who maybe had gone too far.
信じないわけじゃないんですけど。
When she said demon, she meant the ones from hell, but in ancient Japan, the word wasn't necessarily used to denote only that kind, right? The more well-known use involves the drifting foreigner theory. Ah. As the story goes, Westerners who were shipwrecked in nearby seas had such markedly different customs that they were often called demons. Japanese people were relatively similar in appearance to other Asians, but everything about those from the West was different: their physique, their faces, and their skin color. In Japan, terms like red demon, blue demon evoked images especially of Westerners. Lacking in skin pigments, Westerners would sunburn easily and turn red. Oh, okay. Being fairly skinned, I think blood vessels appearing on the skin would look blue too. A handful of accidental aliens would drift into Japan and came under persecution, being called demons. Yeah, so if they were ostracized, they would basically be forced to become bandits in order to survive. They would flee into the mountains to survive, turn into bandit groups, attack villages for food, and the like.
なんて説はどうでしょう。ちょっと子供じみてますかね。
Takano gave me a weird smile when, having come up with such an impromptu hypothesis, I unconsciously followed it up with some self-depreciation. Still, she didn't smile as if to make fun of me.
別におかしくないわよ。実際に漂流異人説を唱える人もいるもの。
I mean, there's a lot of good like the possibilities are much more likely.
でも実際はどうなのかは誰にもわからない。山賊化した異人の集団だったのか、本当に地の底から来た鬼たちだったのか。
I mean,
ね。
one of those two definitely has happened in the past, and one of those has not proven.
じゃあ、高野さんはどっちを信じてるんですか？
She's probably gonna be like, oh, I believe in the power of the story itself. Doesn't really matter what the truth is. The story is what matters.
真相は別にして、夢のある方を信じたいわね。その方が面白いでしょ？
Her answer made it sound a wee bit like a romanticist. Here, I thought she'd reject unrealistic stories like that.
さて、いよいよここからよ。面白くなるのは。
Takano-san brought an end to her storytelling and waits for a moment as if to tantalize us.
Huh?
Suddenly, Shion looked around as if something had caught her eye. Her head bobbed to and fro like she was making sure that nothing had changed.
どうしたシオン？
She's like, I feel like someone else is watching.
ごめんなさい。気にしないでください。
Shion pretended as though nothing had happened. Takano also made sure nothing had happened, then cleared her throat and broached the next subject.
村人たちに半分鬼の血が流れてるのは話したわね。実はその血なんだけど、鬼は鬼でも人食い鬼の血なんだって言われてるの。
Exactly. So cannibals, again. Like, it kind of denotes this idea of like bandits living in the swamp, desperate for food, and use human beings as a source of food. They would be considered demons if you realize what they were. Like, they'd be humans, but you'd realize, oh, these are humans that are eating other humans. Like, you'd see them as a demon.
人食い鬼ですか？急に物騒な響きになりましたね。
その血は今でも村人たちには脈々と流れていてね。
And see, that could be the thing. Maybe this cultish group is a group of people who, via tradition or otherwise, maintains a cannibalistic, cultish, like, secret society.
時折、その血が眠りを覚ますと言われているわ。
I thought the fairy tale had a happy ending, with the humans and demons living in peace, but it began to suddenly change into a brutal, bloody story.
人食い鬼だから、何十年かに一度、どうしても人肉が食べたくて仕方がなくなる周期があるんです。
Oh boy, I am not liking this. And then you look at all the tools on the wall. You got like tables that are meant to strap people down.
だからって、村人同士で共食いするわけにはいかない。
Exactly, it has to be outsiders.
だから、彼らはその度に人里へ降り、鬼隠しをしたと伝えられてるわ。
Onikakushi, the vanishing.
何ですか？鬼隠しって。
平たく言えば、鬼たちによる誘拐行為よ。鬼ヶ淵村の村人たちが人里に押し寄せ、哀れな生贄を無理やり力ずくでさらったんですって。
Takano-san's explanation was plain and simple, but what I imagined was what it was must have been like it was terrifying. They lose their human reason. The villagers turned into real demons en masse. They attack a village as they loathe and in the dirty world of the masses below. And then they kill and eat their sacrifices.
それじゃあ鬼と何ら変わりないじゃないですか。お社様はどうしたんです？その村にとどまって人々を見守ってるんじゃなかったでしたっけ？
The thing is, Oyashiro, he only cares about the people in the village. He doesn't care about the others, so he doesn't mind.
もちろん、お社様も了承してたそうよ。だから、鬼隠しは無差別ではなく、神様が決めた生贄以外には誰もさらわなかったらしいし。
Yeah.
ほとんどの場合は一人か二人だったって記されてるわね。
A village inhabited by those both human and inhuman. It was like the heartwarming episode colors had inverted like a negative film, revealing the painful An ugly truth.
そうして生贄をさらってきた夜にはね、哀れな犠牲者を美味しくいただくため綿流しの儀式が開かれたというわ。
Oh, wait, what? What does that Watanagashi mean then? Watanagashi? Tonight's festival was Watanagashi. I just couldn't reconcile the fun festival with a horrible tale Takano-san was telling me.
綿流しは確か冬の間に使った布団なんかに感謝するお祭りじゃなかったでしたっけ？
ケイちゃん、綿って言いません？
Oh, the double meaning. Like, yeah, I gotcha.
臓物のこと。
Oh, lovely. Oh, that's just great. Shion, who had been silent up until now, spoke up.
綿？そういえば言うな。魚の綿っていう。
Yeah.
え？
Like a jigsaw puzzle, the fun times I had today and Takano's San's grotesque tale clicked together in my mind.
綿流し。
The gut spilling. I didn't think saying that could ever feel so nauseating. Is that what it literally means? Watanagashi means the gut spilling? Wow. Fetch me. If that's really true, then that was right under our nose the whole time. That's one of the things that would have been cool to know about. Like, if I spoke Japanese fluently, I might have seen that coming.
そう、前原くんの想像している通りよ。今でこそ綿流しは毎年6月に行われるちょっと早い夏祭りに過ぎないけど、哀れな食材をさらってきた夜にだけ開かれた凄惨な人食いの宴のことだったの。
Oh, man. And you know, one of the tricks about this cannibalistic stuff is everyone knows it's wrong and everyone would disagree with it. So one way you could ascribe and kind of get some of like your cult following to be more loyal is like you get them into a position where you socially pressure them into consuming human flesh, and then you use that to be like, hey, you're now part of us because you'll never be accepted anywhere else. You're a demon now. So you need to work with us and keep our secrets. It could be a way to foster control out of fear.
嘘だ。
I had no real reason to say that, but I couldn't help it.
前原くんはさっき綿流しは布団を清める儀式だと言ったわね。
Right.
綿が詰まった布団って何を意味してると思うかしら。
Oh, and a futon is the size of a human. So you could argue that the futons are substitutes for humans, biding your time until the real Watanagashi can occur. And maybe that hoe is a ritual bloodletter. You sharpen a hoe, it can be very strong, and could be used to remove the wata. Oh, and Rika's charged with doing that as part of her ceremony. And remember too, like the hoe that she's using, it's heavy. Almost like it's not actually meant to be a farming tool at all.
布団は布団だろ。シング、寝るための道具だよ。他に何の意味があるんだよ。
I was rattling on, desperately attempting to deny the horrible festival that Takano was describing. Deep down, however, I found myself understanding all too well what she meant. Futons stuffed with cotton. If the cotton represents entrails in both pronunciation and meaning, then the entrail-filled futons would have to be humans.
では、リカちゃんがやった奉納演舞を思い出してちょうだい。
I don't like how I'm right on board with everything it's revealing. Like, I'm just like, it's like, I see the logic there, and that's really scary because it does start to make a lot of sense, doesn't it?
リカちゃんがあそこで何をしていたか。
わからねえよ。第一、リカちゃんの演舞は最後までちゃんと見てないし。
Yeah.
ケイちゃん、エキサイトしすぎです。
Shion grabbed one of my ears, reminding me that this wasn't somewhere I should raise my voice. Even so, I still can't suppress this agitation I feel.
リカちゃんが持っていた祭事用のクワ、もううすうすは気づいてると思うけど、あれは田畑を耕すクワではなくて。
Dang it! Dang it!
人間の腹をこじ開けるための解剖道具なのよ。
It's a weird tool to use, but I get it. Oh. Actually, if I think about it, by the way, this screenshot, amazing. But a hoe. So it's used as an implementation for dissecting and disemboweling. But the original probably was a farmer's tool. Because most, like, there's a lot of times where weapons were first crafted from tools used in fields. Like, heck, the reason why we even think of a scythe as a weapon, it's a farmer tool. But we can think of it as a weapon because it was a metal tool that was sharp and could cause injury that was on hand for peasant revolts because peasants had tools for farming. So a hoe could have been the first tool used, and then it became a traditional tool. But then, they learned we can make this a practical weapon for such use, thus the excessively heavy hoe, which is much better at cutting flesh than dirt. I didn't see the dance all the way through, so I didn't know what kind of performance Rika-chan was putting on after I'd left. When I told this to Takano-san, she kindly explained Rika-chan's dance to me. To summarize what she said, after what I'd seen, Rika-chan would pierce the futon with the hoe, cut them open, and pull out the cotton inside. She'd cut the cotton out one bit at a time and set it afloat. That's the kind of ritual it was.
平たく言えば、魚の綿を取り出して三角コーナーに捨てるのを仰々しく儀式仕立てにしたってことね。
Bombastic. What's really horrifying too is if this ritual, like, this is sad that I even can relate this, and I don't. It's just one of those things that sometimes you weirdly pick up when you read about some of the brutal things in history. What's really disturbing about this is that bombastic ceremony is one thing, because if you were to strap a person down and you were to attack their navel, their guts, whilst they would quickly bleed out, it wouldn't be the fastest way. It wouldn't be an instant death, and it wouldn't be very quick, and they would have capacities to make noise whilst you did it. It would be one of the worst ways to go, because they would be one of the few ways you could kill someone relatively quickly, whilst they could feel and be conscious for most of the process. So there's a nice little thought for you. Horrifying.
それで儀式はおしまい。その後はそれぞれの役割を持った村人たちがおのおのに肉を解体して美味しくいただいたって考えられてるわね。
I like how even Shion. First of all, we don't see Keiichi much, so it's interesting seeing him here. And secondly, Shion also doesn't look like she's very fond of this story. As Takano-san's strangely happy giggle, I felt, for some reason, violent displeasure. Rika-chan, every day during our lunch break, she'd take the rice-pounding mallet into the schoolyard, and she'd work so hard, sweating bullets, to practice for the officiatory dance she had done today. All that effort, all that work. Takano-san disgraced it, even though she worked so hard to practice for today.
高野さんももう少し言葉を選んでほしいです。
Yeah. Interesting that our instinct is to defend the village here. That's one thing that's interesting about Keiichi, is he does feel like a part of the village, even though he's only been here a short time. And his instincts have lunged towards defending the village in irrational ways.
ケイちゃん、ナイーブなんですから、あまりからかわないでください。
A moment before I opened my mouth to express how angry I was, Shion stopped me. Shion must have been fully aware of how that story made me feel.
ごめんなさい。男の子だからショッキングな話は結構好きかと思って。
It's funny. I don't, and I play the stuff on the channel. Most of it has been with shock value, and I guess maybe I do, but I don't know. I don't revel in the shock value. I find it horrific, but that's part of why it's an effective story. Because if you get so desensitized that you just kind of find it amusing, then that denotes more about you than anything else. Takano-san spoke without a hint of malice as she smiled gracefully.
この辺まで話を聞けば、ケイちゃんにもこの細具殿の中にどういうものがあるのか理解できるようになってきませんか？ほら、
Shion pointed out to one of the walls vaguely illuminated by the lantern's light. There was, mere moments ago, they hadn't held my interest. They were just boring-looking tools lined up on the shelves. All those uninteresting tools I didn't understand how to use, they all suddenly took on a whole new meaning, and I couldn't quite help but let out a groan. At first they'd looked like carpentry tools, like chisels or planes. However, when I thought back, I'd seen pictures of these sorts of tools before. Yeah, they came up in a Japanese history textbook. Yes, on the page introducing the Kaitai Shinsho, or the new text on anatomy.
こういうのはね、医学の本場、ドイツの文献の方がリアルに掲載されてるわよ。
These aren't carpentry tools. These strangely shaped tools, they're for dissection. Everyone knows that in the Edo period, they would dissect the corpse of those whom they had been put to death in order to gain knowledge about Western medical techniques. Illustrations of the dissection tools they used at the time came up in textbook supplements. The things hung up on the wall, they looked exactly the same as those. Oh boy.
もっと怖い言い方をするなら、調理道具といったところかしらね。
Talking about that doesn't help. That makes it worse. She's kind of malicious. Takano-san, holding the lantern, only light source in the room, led us along the wall. She had the only light, so I had to walk with her, whether I liked it or not.
ほら。
Takano-san illuminated the coiled chain, which left a bigger impression than the other things we saw. The chain itself was nothing unusual, but further along it were metal fetters that were like hinges, clearly meant for binding people.
ケイちゃん、
Yeah?
あれ、
Oh no. Shion tapped me on the shoulder and pointed to a restraining table that was clearly shaped like a person. My spine froze. My blood felt like it was turning into a sherbet and it crawled up my back. Yeah, that's the thing. This is real evidence here. You don't just have these things, and you don't have them stored in a place that you regard as holy. On each of the joints, there were things like chains and iron balls attached. It was like the table was searching for its next sacrifice, ready to spread their arms wide and close them in.
多分、まな板じゃないかしら。
A butchering table.
犠牲者を拘束して、この台の上でお料理をしたんだと思うわね。
The words chopping block sent a jolt through my body. When I looked more closely, there were many dark slices carved into it as though with a knife or saw. They were the most clear-cut signs of usage you could ask for. It proved these tools weren't just for show, that they were used for the original purpose. If someone was strapped tightly to the table, they probably wouldn't be able to move even a muscle. Their guts would be defenseless. You take one of these eerie cooking knives lined over there, stab them with it, and then you'd slice open their belly and dissect them?
話には聞いてたけど、すごい。
Oh man, so you're actually shocked. See, up until now, she seemed kind of cool as a cucumber, but this actually looks like she's disturbed. Before coming in here, Shion had mentioned that she had a good guess of what was inside, but it seemed to have exceeded her imagination.
まだまだあるわよ。
God gives, like, if this actually occurred with the first game, it makes a lot more sense why he was so freaked out by everything.
どう？老人形館より面白いでしょ？
Takano-san had a happy expression like she was visiting a toy store for the first time. I don't get it. This Mio Takano person never has nerves of steel. Are these bizarre, grotesque objects that fascinating to her? I, for one, was not enjoying myself. I'd be frank, this was all too weird for me. Still, there was something even more horrifying than all this. That would be none other than Takano-san herself. Takano-san holding the lantern, giving off such a thin beam of light. If she suddenly turned it off, then what would I do? The next moment, everything went totally dark. That's why I was scared. Takano-san had the only light and answer, and anyway, I was scared. At some point, Shion had started holding onto my shirt sleeve. It was a little annoying to walk like that, but I didn't shake her off. That minor sensation allowed me to feel the presence of an ally here and now. Before we had even walked halfway through the storeroom, the air I felt on my skin changed completely. These cruel tools lined up all crammed together in this place. Some were horrible ones made for to take away sacrifices' freedoms, and Some were tools made to efficiently disassemble and prepare the bodies for consumption. Those were just the things I understood. There were plenty of other strange-looking objects that I couldn't even guess the purpose of. Now that I was here, I didn't have the slightest desire to hear the details about what sort of terrifying reason they were meant to be used for. At the very least, they were all completely different from the sort of clean, simple killing function of a katana. Tools to kill people were obviously constructed in a way here that they could kill people. If that was the goal, then the person who used them on would obviously end up dead. The kinds of tools here, however, were different. The tools that were here were for cutting people, for crushing them, for boiling them and cooking them, and for grinding them. They were tools of torture. Yeah, I was about to say this. The other thing about this, remember the story that Takada was saying, she was talking about how she felt like they had a device that they would put the person on and put them in the swamp and they would slowly sink in over the course of 3 days, right? What if that's not the literal use or case that they would have here? What if instead of strapping them down, because that might be seen as a waste, but it could be a function of slowly sinking to their death? So what if their ceremonial carving up process here, in this situation, is a 3-day process where you try and excise as much as you can from them whilst they're still alive? It's like the worst form of torture, because the whole point would be to ritualistically just keep them living as long as possible. They weren't made to kill people. People dying was just an incidental result. Actually, they might not even kill them. If their sacrifices could die during such a horrific ritual process, that would be nice, but they don't even die in the end. They remain in a state of hellish pain. Perhaps they were only being allowed to live. Only now in this moment did I fully realize just how terrifying and fearsome that difference was.
人ってね、上手にやると結構殺さずに済むものらしいの。
Takano-san, as if reading my mind, displayed a shocking smile.
魔女狩りで有名な家系、火あぶりなんかはすぐに死んじゃうのよ。
Yeah.
全身の皮膚が広範囲にわたって重度の火傷を負うと、組織の分解産物で中毒症状を引き起こし、重度なショックを併発しちゃうから。まあ、確かにそれに至るまでがギロチンなんかに比べればはるかに長いところに残虐性があるんだけど。
She describes such horrors in a strangely medical way. Shion immediately answered the question I had.
高野さん、看護師さんですから。
There's a saying that nothing can scare a doctor. I guess it's true.
ところがね、ローマの時代の処刑方法にね、網焼きというものがあったの。
So many fun ways we've learned over the years to kill people.
バーベキューと同じにね、金網で挟みつけて炭火でじっくりと焼いたんです。
Could you imagine? That'd be horrifying. To think the memories of what I went to a day camp with my family would come rushing back now of all times so vividly.
これだとね、どういうわけかなかなか死なないらしいのよ。ものの本によると、一昼夜かけて片側が炭化するくらいこんがり焼いても、まだ意識があって流暢に話をした。
That's so horrifying.
記述も出てくるから。
That's so horrifying. That's insane. You'd grill someone the whole day and then they'd still be conscious? It's said that ancient Rome, famous for their executions, thought of plenty of ways to execute someone while having the victim stay alive as long as possible.
その中にね、お腹を開いて腸をウインナーみたいに引っ張り出してウィンチで引っ張り上げて晒し物にする系があったんですって。
Yeah. See, that's the story where I knew about the type of long, drawn out, keeping the person as conscious as long as possible death. Shion was behind me, clinging to me. Not just because she was scared. She was protecting her stomach.
臓物を引っ張り出すなんて聞いただけでもすぐに死んじゃいそうでしょ。
No, if you avoided the major arteries.
でもね、丁寧に優しくやるとね、意識がはっきりとした状態のまま腹綿を引きずり出すことって って可能らしいのよ。
I genuinely don't feel good. I'm feeling like I'm gonna be sick. Like, you have to understand, remember, the reason I like games like this is because I have such a visual and very powerful imagination. This is not a fun way to experience that. I felt sick feeling in my stomach. Me too, bro. It was like my organs were coiling up just from Takano's stare.
ウィンチで引っ張り出すっていうのはなんだか巧妙な方法だけど、もっと野蛮に裂いた腹から臓物をちぎっては投げちぎっては投げという、そんな恐ろしい刑もあったんじゃないかって十分に考えられない？
They did. Humans have been remarkably cruel to each other, and all it really takes is to dehumanize whoever you're doing this to make sure that they don't seem human anymore. To make them sound like demons. Outsiders. Enemies.
でも処刑者には意識があるの。それは痛い以上に恐ろしい体験なんでしょうね。
I don't want to talk about this anymore. She spoke with pleasure as if she had to come here on a sightseeing trip. I heard Shion gulping multiple times near my ears.
Hinamizawaの、いえ、鬼ヶ淵村の綿流しもそんな感じだったのかしらね。ほら、耳を澄ませば聞こえてくるような気がしない？
I wanted nothing more than to not hear anything at all. So why? Why only at times like these do I begin to hear things I shouldn't be able to? Takano-san, having realized she'd scared Shion and I enough at this point, smiled soothingly. Then she turned on her heel, raised the lantern, and began to walk again. Oh, didn't mean that. Oh, that's why. I keep accidentally clicking the wrong one. If Takano-san left us here, we'd get even further away from the light. Shion and I, no matter how scared we were forced to follow Takano-san on for her field trip through the ritual storehouse. Ugh.
これで軽く一周できたかしらね、面白いところでしょ？
Sure, that's the word. Interesting, she says, raising the lantern high in the center of the storehouse. The dim lighting didn't change, but for some reason it felt like I was able to see all the horrible tools at once. Oh gosh. Shion stammered while grabbing the nape of my neck. What? I couldn't tell because it was so dark, but there was a lot more tools hanging from the ceiling as well. They all looked like they were made of iron bars, but then I figured it out. Cages? Cages. For cages, they were very small. Cramped cages for just one, like a casket. If you got locked up in there, no, you wouldn't get locked up inside it. It was another tool meant to restraining people, where the iron bars would squeeze you tightly. So many big and large things of all shapes were hanging down. Takano-san's mention of execution by grilling crosses my mind. We weren't just surrounded on all sides with these terrifying instruments. Things crowding the ceiling were even hanging over our heads.
ヨーロッパの拷問道具にこういった鳥かごがたくさん登場するわね。日本にもあったなんて驚きだわ。ケイちゃん。
Yeah.
あれ、中に入ってない？
Oh gosh, are you messing with me? Are you actually serious?
人？ミイラ？
どれ？
Shion desperately pointed out one of the many human-sized bird cages hanging from the ceiling, but I couldn't tell what one she meant. Being in the dark, there was no way any way you could tell something was there in the first place.
私には何も見えないけど、見間違いじゃないの？
Shion didn't seem convinced, but without a means of confirming for ourselves, we couldn't do much but wonder.
これで前原君にも なんとなく信じられるようになったんじゃないかしら。
I can imagine that there's been some pretty terrible people in this village in the past, and that they used the cult. Yeah, this really solidifying my whole belief in the cult side, the cult angle.
ひなみざわに伝えられる恐ろしい儀式の数々が
I got nothing to do with believing in them. Now that I've been shown as a real thing like this, there's no possible way to deny it. Even the nations of Europe, with all their beautiful landscapes and legends, were like a maelstrom during the terrible witch hunts of the Dark Ages. It's well known that the era gave birth to countless gruesome forms of torture and execution. Japan was the same way. Didn't have its own era of hellscape-like tortures feasts because of religious oppression and things of that nature. Hinamizawa itself had such a period. It had that much history behind it. Even in Europe, land of the witch hunts, that was all far in the past, no more than a series of historical events, and in this age, nothing that abnormal would ever happen. That must apply to Hinamizawa as well.
中世の暗黒時代とかがそうだったように、ひなみざわにも暗黒時代があった。そういうものなんだと解釈します。本当にひなみざわでこういう恐ろしいことがあったのだとしても、それは大昔の出来事なんです。
Are they, though?
今暮らしているひなみざわの人々とは何の関係もないことです。
前原くんは本当にひなみざわが好きなのね。
It didn't sound like she was making fun of me. Takano-san gave me a light smile.
でも高野さんはその風習が実は現代にも残っているんじゃないかと思って研究をしてるんです。
And that's why she has to get vanished.
そうでしたよね。
Shion suggesting something that made my heart leap into my throat. Are you telling me that all these horrible things that are still going on today?
これ本当に内緒なんだけど、ね。
Oh, baby. What? You had evidence?
しおんちゃんは理解のある人だから話したけど、他の村人には聞かれたくないの。下手をしたら罰当たり者ってことで袋叩きにされかねないんだから。
You mean will? Shion flashed a devilish smile as if reveling in the immorality of it.
前原くんも内緒にしてね。知られたら私、お社様のたたりに会うか、生贄にされちゃうかするかもしれない。たたりなら今年はどんな死に方をさせられちゃうのかしら。生贄なら鬼ヶ淵の沼に生きたまま沈められちゃうのかしら。そういえば今夜よね。お社様のたたりがある夜は。
Takano-san said, bringing her face right up close to ours. As if to say that she had the choice, she'd rather suffer the curse. That was what she seemed to be implying. Takano-san took a fairly worn notebook out of her paper bag and began to flip through its pages. There were all sorts of references and newspaper clippings attached to them, and it had all manner of things written inside. The letters were very small and bunched together, so I couldn't tell at a glance what it was about.
本当は国会図書館で当時の新聞を探したいんだけどね。ほら、ここ。
A photocopy of a page from some book that was slid into the notebook, and it, too, was written in small, tight lettering. Like the other pages, I couldn't tell what it was about just by glancing at it.
これは実際にあったお話よ。明治の終わり頃にね、鬼ヶ淵村で身元不明の惨殺死体が発見されたんですって。
An old newspaper clipping attached to the page spoke of something that was no more mere rumor or fairy tale.
当時の警察の資料がほとんど残ってないそうだから、口伝と記憶によるものだけなんだけどね。ほら、これ不鮮明だけど、明治の頃の新聞の切り抜きみたい。
Never before has been a corpse treated with such cruelty and inhumanity. Could it be the work of a demon? Being a copy of a copy, it was very hard to make out, but it was more than enough to make me feel strangely tense. Near the end of the Meiji era, the old Onikakushi village, a mangled corpse was discovered. The identity of the corpse was unknown. It wasn't even in a state where it could be identified in the first place. It was missing a head, each limb was separated from the body. Skin had been peeled off the entire body, and there were markings that implied terrible torture at every place imaginable. Not only that, but the belly had been cut open by a sharp knife and with the entrails completely dragged out. Fetch. The police immediately began an investigation, but since they couldn't even determine the identity of the victim, much less the crime, finding out answers was extremely difficult.
どういう状況かわかるかしら？
I couldn't imagine such a strange sight, even if I tried. This was the first time I was ever thankful for my lack of imagination. Buddy, you're lucky. The one saving grace I have is I only have limited experience and exposure to medical stuff, like on humans especially. Glad I'm not a doctor. If I were a doctor or even saw, like with my own eyes, an operation, I think it might be, my imagination might be a little too good at this. Because it's already kind of tough, but I can only, most of the stuff I can use is like movie props or stuff when it comes to these things, so I don't know. I'm genuinely not feeling great right now.
被害者は生きながらにして全身の皮を剥がれ、あらゆる拷問を受けていじめ殺されたんです。そして死後にもさらに遺体を分解解剖と残虐の限りを尽くしたのではないかって筆者は見ているわね。私はどの工程も生きているうちにやったんじゃないかって思ってるんだけどね。
That's so horrifying.
前原君はどう思うかしら？
I think we need to go. She spoke in a way that intended to make me imagine even more vicious things. And my brain was already far over capacity, however, there's no way I could imagine anything more brutal. Then when I broke my gaze from Takano-san's, the strangely shaped weird tools were all around us. I wonder if you could faithfully reproduce a mutilated corpse discovered at the end of the Meiji era with the tools found in this place. I wanted to deny it. I didn't want to admit that something so terrible could have happened at all. Even so, they were so strange, so terrifying, these tools. As if they had seen through my attempt to escape from them, they did nothing but ridicule me silently.
その薄気味悪い事件が何だって言うんですか？
筆者はね、鬼ヶ淵村の恐ろしい習慣は明治以降の近代。ひょっとすると昭和初期くらいまでは残ってたんじゃないかって結んでるわ。
This corpse at a glance appeared to have been brutally killed after a period of torture. In actuality, however, it was a pitiful sacrificial it was the pitiful sacrificial remains of man-eater's terrifying feast. The corpse was just leftovers. It was so fantastic, so strange, it didn't feel real. Was this an extension of the legends too? It happened in the Meiji era though, which is just too recent to be called the legend. Also, there's a newspaper clipping right here that's suggesting it.
でも本当にあったとしたって昔のことですよね。明治なんて言ったらそれこそ100年くらい前の。
So it's like late 1800s. That is really close.
たったよ。たった100年前のことよ。
Like she'd be like, you need to understand something. Like frame of reference. It's very possible there are villagers who were alive when this happened. Well, I guess 100 years ago is a long time. But, like, it's possible. More likely, though, like, there are people alive in the village whose parents were alive and could have been, like, participants in this.
それにね、昭和に入ってからだってあるんだから。終戦直後に騒ぎになった。
Yeah.
人肉缶詰事件。
Oh.
ごめんなさい。
The canned flesh incident?
この話はタブーだったわよね。
Oh. Is that a real story? I feel like I heard that somewhere before. Like, in the desperate times post-war, where starvation was just so rampant, they started, like, kind of gathering up those who were, like, homeless and collapsing, like, outside and, like, in the streets, and then processing them. Takano-san immediately stopped talking as if worried about Shion. Shion briefly looked somewhat angry, but the expression soon disappeared.
今高野さんなんて言いました？人肉缶詰って。
Just then, there was a huge creaking noise. Everyone whipped around to look. It was Tomatake-san, who had opened the door slightly.
驚かせちゃったかな
Yeah?
ここ、素敵な拷問道具の宝庫よ。
僕は遠慮させてもらうよ。生来ね、こういうのは苦手なんだ。
Takano-san held her stomach and had to muffle her laughter as if she wanted to make a comment about his masculinity.
それより、演舞とセレモニーが終わって、みんな沢の方に降りていったよ。
We need to get out of here.
あと何分もしないうちにお祭りは終わっちゃう。
あら、いけない。前原くんがあまりにも聞き上手だから、またお話三昧になっちゃったわ。
I'd really rather you not mention me in a place like this.
二郎さんは表で待っててくれるかしら？私はちょっと写真を撮るわね。本当はいくつか道具を持って帰りたいんだけど、それはさすがに無理そうだからね。
Takano-san took a camera out of her paper bag and began to snap photographs. She looked like she was having fun, like she was on a scavenger hunt.
ん？ケイチ君も出るかい？
もう十分に見ましたので。シオン、もういいだろう。出ようぜ。
Yeah.
綺麗な空気が吸いたいよ。
Let's get out of here.
同感です。出ましょう。
I did feel a bit of hesitation at leaving Takano-san by herself in this darkness. When I thought about it, though, I realized that whatever kinds of evil spirits and ghosts lurked in the darkness, none of them could hold a candle to how scary she was. That's pretty good. Even if a phantasm were to appear, she'd be overjoyed and flash her camera at it. Seemed like Shion shared my somewhat rude mental images. We exchanged glances and smiled painfully. We left Takano-san there, bathed in her strobe of camera flashes, and decided to go leave the ritual storehouse. You can't just play happy music! Everyone at the festival seemed to have gone to the stream, so their voices were very distant. The voices of the bugs, on the other hand, were clear, lending an empty feeling to isolation to the place.
どうだい？面白かったかい？
Horrifying! Ugh. Tomatake-san gave us a somewhat mischievous grin. He should have been able to tell by looking how pale our faces were.
富武さんと一緒に留守番をしてればよかったです。
Yeah. Tomatake-san laughed so delightfully that it wiped away our dark feelings.
シオンちゃんはどうだったかな？怖かったかい？
一応心の準備があった分怖くはなかったですけど、でもやっぱり実物は迫力あります。
Shion spoke like she wasn't scared at all. She really had been quite afraid, but seeing as how I was in way worse a state than her, I didn't have much room to talk. As Tomatake-san grinned candidly, my mind, exhausted and locked up by nervousness, began to calm itself.
高野さんはおとなしく見物してたかな？ほら、彼女子供っぽいところがあるだろう？宝の山を前にさぞや興奮してたんじゃないかと思ってね。
Oh yeah, she was way overboard. Both Shion and I laughed and left out that as our answer.
見るだけならいいんだけどね。こっそりと何かを持ち出したり、いじくりすぎて細具を壊したりしないかが心配なんだよ。
Right, that's quite possible. She is alone in there right now. She might pilfer something small and easily concealed, hiding it in her pocket.
やりかねないです。
Shion said what I was thinking.
本当に何も壊したりしなかったかな。なんだかドタンバタンと飛び跳ねるような音がよく聞こえたからね。
Really?
僕は不安で。
ごめんなさい。フィルムがなくなっちゃったわ。二郎さん、フィルムが余ってたら分けてくれないかしら。
Takano-san suddenly appeared while we were talking about her, taking everyone by surprise. The other thing about that too, so what was that sound of jumping? That wasn't us. Tomatake-san smoothly grinned and responded as if nothing had happened. He's pretty mature.
もう予備のフィルムは切れちゃったよ。申し訳ないね。
もう、いついかなる時でもフィルムを残しておかないと、決定的スクープ写真なんか撮れないわよ。仕方ないわね。
Tomatake-san scratched his head apologetically. Without film, we're done here. Takano-san seemed to have given up because of that too. We checked carefully to make sure we hadn't left anything inside, then closed the door and turned the heavy padlock we'd left beside it.
高野さん、何も持ち出してないだろうね。
失礼ね。そこまで子供じゃないつもりよ。
Trying. Clack. Tomatake-san set the padlock back the way it was before. From a cursory glance, it didn't look like thieves had snuck in at all.
よし、僕たちも沢に行こう。綿を流すところくらいやらないと、お祭りに来た意味がないよ。
Tomataka-san spoke brightly, urging us all on, setting cotton afloat down the stream. I shook my head a few times, driving away the dismal thoughts as to the double meaning. Takano-san, looking a little let down, kept turning back to glance at the ritual storehouse. Oh, I'm sure you'll be back there
これっ
soon.
きりにしてくれよ。十分に知的好奇心は満たせただろう。
まさか。むしろ新しい興味を惹かれるような発見ばかりよ。今日のでこれまでの仮説が一気に現実になったわ。これで今後の調べ方がだいぶ変わってくるんだから。
Wow, she's truly indomitable. Her curiosity really is something else, still interested in all this, through and through. Oh boy. We descended the stone stairs so all the people crowded at the stream came into view. Near the bottom of the stairs, we could clearly see people receiving cotton that had been cut out for them, then wishing upon the cotton and setting it afloat down the stream. The festival's already over.
まずったな。綿流しの一番いいところを撮影し損ねたよ。
あら、まだ遅くないわよ。私が行って流すんだから。私を撮ってはくださらないのかしら？
Takano-san, with an impish expression, brought her head to Tomataka-san's shoulder. Despite his age, he looked embarrassed. I felt an honest respect for Tomataka-san, man to man, for dating such a handful of a woman.
じゃあね、前原くん、しおんちゃんも。
僕たちは今からでも沢に行ってみるよ。君たちも一緒に来るかい？
Maybe we'll go separately.
まさかお二人の邪魔なんてできません。どうぞごゆっくり。
Shion waved her hand at them with an expression just as impish as Takano-san's. Tomataka-san, on his part, seemed to want us to come, but whatever. Shion gave a big stretch and sat down on the stone steps.
疲れちゃいました。
Me too. Me too. Oh boy.
同感だな。俺も疲れた。
ケイちゃんは綿流し初めてなんですよね。
Yeah, what a memorable one.
私なんか気にしないで行ってきてください。私は疲れちゃったんで、人混みはちょっとパスしておきます。
Yeah, if we're going now, we'd barely slip into the end of the cotton drifting ceremony.
お姉たちがケイちゃんのことを探してるかもしれませんから、行ってきてください。
あ、そうだ。ミオンたちと別れたまま、それっきりだったな。探してると悪い。
Then, Shion suddenly got a playful look on her face, then put an index finger on her lips as if telling me to keep this a secret.
お姉ってすっごく嫉妬深いんです。
Oh dear. See, that's what I was worried about. I was worried that, like, she's gonna use the jealousy as the fuel against us.
私がケイちゃんを独占してたことがバレると、いろいろうるさいんで、今夜のことは秘密にしておいてくださいね。
I clicked early. Sorry. Keep tonight a secret. Don't say things that are so embarrassing.
そういう意味だけじゃないですよ。今夜、私たちがしたことを思えば、秘密にするのは当然です。
Yeah.
今夜起こるかもしれないお社様のたたり。私たち4人が最有力候補なんですからね。
The loosening threads of tension became taut again. Shion, however, burst out laughing.
じゃあ、私はお姉に出くわす前に退散します。今日は本当に疲れてるから、お姉とやり合えるだけの体力はないですし。
シオンって、ミオンと仲がいいのか悪いのか、
Yes.
よくわからないな。
The answer is yes.
仲、いいですよ。
Yeah. Like, both positively and negatively. Though she said that, her vague expression explained that there are a lot of oddities in the relationship between twins.
俺は一人っ子だからよくわかんないな。せいぜい仲良くしろよ。
はい。余計なおせっかいと承ります。
Thank you for meddling.
それじゃあ私はこの辺で。ケイちゃんも急いで行った方がいいですよ。本当に綿流しが終わっちゃいます。
Shion stood up and brushed the dust off her backside. After watching her do so, I returned my eyes to the final ceremony of the Watanagashi festival below me.
でも本当に、あの音は何だったんでしょうね。
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
不愉快というか、気味が悪いというか。
何の音だって？
音ですよ。ドタンバタンって。
Yeah.
うるさかったじゃないですか。
I was giving her a blank expression, so Shion stared hard at me. I stared hard at her too.
ごめん、シオン。はしょらないで最初から説明してくれないか。何がうるさかったって？
ケイちゃん、気にならなかったんですか？
When all said and done, it was like we were speaking two different languages.
シオン、冗談抜きで初めから説明してくれないか。音がどうしたって？
That's the thing. He heard something, but it sounded more like chimes to him, I think. But Tomatake-san talked about it too.
ケイちゃんこそ冗談抜きで、本当に気にならなかったんですか？
Neither of us was giving any ground. Both of us are staring at each other in disbelief. We were answering questions with more questions with no sign of an actual conversation in sight. Baffled, I held on to the urge to shout at her and asked politely one more time.
もう一度聞くからな。質問は俺からだ。
Shion nodded silently.
じゃあ聞くぞ。音がしたって何のことだ？
ドタンバタンって、なんだかどこか遠くの板の間で子供が跳ねてるような。
Oh boy.
本当に気にならなかったんですか？
気にならないも何も。そんな音いつ聞こえた？俺は何も聞いてないぞ。
ちょっとケイちゃん、それ本気で言ってるんですか？
Shion, as if she didn't understand my plain and simple answer, pressed me further, her expression serious. I have no clue what she's talking about, but if it has Shion acting like this, whatever it was, it gave me the creeps and sent a chill down my spine.
さっき最後伝の中で高野さんと一緒に見て回ってる最中、高野さんが昔話を始めた頃からかな、少しずつだんだんとちょくちょくと。
She heard a banging sound like a child jumping on distant floorboards.
嘘だろ？最後の最後で怖がらせるのはなしだぜ、おい。
I didn't hear anything at all. In fact, it was so utterly silent that my own heartbeat was almost deafening.
ケイちゃんこそ怖がらせないでください。
Yeah, but Tomatake-san mentioned it too. We're the only ones that didn't hear it clearly?
なんだか高野さんの怖い話に合わせて音を立ててるようで、私ずっと薄気味悪かったんですから。
Why? What was it? The chill rose from my spine to the back of my head. My blood turned cold as it crawled up my body. When I reached my head, my mind froze over.
ケイちゃんも高野さんも全然意にも介さない風だったので、私も聞こえないふりをずっとしてましたけど、聞こえましたよね。何度かはすごく大きな音でしたから。
Oh my gosh, how would we miss that? Shion's eyes were begging me to tell her I'd heard it. I had no doubt, however, my own eyes suggested something entirely different. You've got to be kidding look. In that storehouse, we were surrounded by brutal ritual tools that looked like they were used from another planet, and listening to terrifying old stories. The whole time, Shion had been hearing a sound that we couldn't hear by herself? Should that make Shion, who heard it, tremble, or should that make me, who didn't hear it, tremble? I didn't know the answer to that at the time. For now, Shion seemed to have made a decision before I did.
なんだよ、突然。
引っかかりましたね、ケイちゃん。嘘ですよ。
はぁ？
Shion laughed, saying how easily scared I was and clapped me on the back. Her smile seemed somehow artificial, and actually made me feel worse. Then, after leaving me with 2 or 3 generic diplomatic goodbye phrases, she left almost like she was running away. Oh gosh. All I could do was look after her, my mouth agape. At the end of the day, I didn't have a clue what was going on. Shion laughed it off and said she'd been lying, but she couldn't possibly have been lying. Of course not. And now I think it back, Tomatake-san said the same thing, didn't he?
なんだかドタンバタンと飛び跳ねるような音がよく聞こえたからね。僕は不安で。
What is that about? What is that about? Tomatake-san, the most neutral party present at the time, had said he'd heard something. Then that noise, it was real. The banging sounds. Sound as though a child was jumping up and down on some kind of floorboards far away. Oyashiro-sama's curse, which happens every year, might have happened again tonight. The most possible victim candidates were Takano-san, Tomatake-san, Shion, and me. The bustling of people sounded further away than I would have liked, and the sound of the insects sounded too close for comfort. I'm near so much human warmth, and yet I can't ever go back there again. That was the ominous idea that sprouted in my mind. Then all of a sudden I was pounced on from behind, causing my heart to lurch.
ケイチ、見つけたなのです。
Hey Rika. It was Rika-chan. When I turned around, Beyond and ran over there too.
やっと見つけた。あとはさとこか。
今年はみんなはぐれちゃったね。来年からはちゃんと合流場所を決めておきたいな。はあ。
Could Satoko possibly have been spying on us and like she was jumping to like see?
そうだね。やっぱりお祭りはみんなと一緒でないとね。
I listened to Mion's happy declaration with a little bit of guilt.
圭一は僕の演舞はちゃんと応援してくれましたですか？
Of course I did.
ああ、ちゃんと見てたぜ。最後までちゃんと頑張ったな。ミスもなかったし。
うん、そうだよリカちゃん。あんなのはミスのうちに入らないよ。
I tensed up as I realized I'd made a mistake of my own. Uh-oh, Mion slapped a hand on my shoulder a little roughly. A gross sweat broke out over my whole body. Oh, fetch.
ケイちゃんはやった？綿をもらって沢に流した？
You haven't yet, right? Is what I could feel her saying. Without the courage to tell anyone any more lies, I lidlessly shook my head.
あれ？そうなの圭一くん。早く行かないと終わっちゃうよ。終わっちゃうよ。
ごめん。初めてのお祭りだからさ。よくルールがわからなくて。
そうだったね。ごめん。
Mion took my hand and we started walking down the stone steps.
ねえケイちゃん。
なんだよ。
Oh no.
シオンには会わなかった？
Yeah, my heart skipped another beat. Maybe Mion could sense my surprise through my hand?
いや、でも、姿を見たような。でも、ミオンとそっくりだからな。ミオンだったのかもしれないし。
そんなに間違えないでしょ？服装だって違うんだから。
そうだよな。
Mion's momentary silence was like a death grip upon me. Oh, fetch me. He's already messed it up. Oh, man, he had no chance.
しょうがないな、シオンは。まあ、あいつのことだから、放っておいても大丈夫かな。
Mion's expression returned to her former usual smile. We continued down the stone steps, her firmly pulling my hand along. Oh boy, we're so dead. We're so dead. We're so dead. We're just dead. Like, I know we're dead, but we're super dead. And like, I feel like she's motivated to kill now. Oh my gosh, there's 3 tips, and we've already been recording for an hour. I was right to stop what I did last time. Plumbing the depths. And that's a picture of a hoe. Oh, that's lovely. All right, let's look at the tips. There's 1, 2, and 3. Scrapbook IV. Oh, it's her scrapbook. That makes sense now. Watanagashi. The rite of Watanagashi is performed during the village festival every June, even now, but reading back on its true origins turns up a seriously sanguine ceremony. Originally, Watanagashi would happen at certain intervals, and after receiving Oyashiro-sama's trust, they chose a sacrifice. Then the entire village would kidnap, demon away, the person ceremonially dissect and devour them in a feast. The rules that determine the intervals are shrouded in mystery. This is because the ceremonies occurred extremely irregularly. There's a theory that it was determined based on the astrological fortune-telling, but that isn't too convincing. The residents of ancient Onikakushi village firmly believed that they were half-man, half-demon transcendents, and that they were more valuable than humans were, and they forced people within and without to accept that. Perhaps that act of kidnapping and eating people was done to prove that they were higher up on the food chain. This is just a hypothesis, but maybe the rite of Watanagashi was a political event for the purposes of bringing an outlet for, or outright diverting attention of, the villagers of the isolating Onikakushi village. That's what I was saying. Matches more of a cult, using beliefs to facilitate political gain, which is what the last few years since the dam situation brought about. And what's interesting there too is to think about this. Before here, right, it was irregular. These Watanagashi events, the sacrifices, the spiriting away, they were infrequent, probably determined on very specific situations. But now all of a sudden it's happening every year. Seems like someone's being opportunistic, realizing they can weaponize this tradition. And that when they did it the first time and people accepted it, the village went along with it. They were like, oh, we can use this. And so they perpetuated the curse as a way to facilitate it as a justification. in case any of their complaints or dissatisfactions grew serious. And that was the main reason these ceremonies were held, and it's easy to explain how erratic they were. Yeah. No, I think that's a major clue right there. That lines up a lot with my personal theory. That was a good one. That's a very good clue, I think. Could be completely wrong. We'll see. Now, from the Scrapbook 5. The alleged importance of the implements. I can't find anything that gives a concrete description of what the ritual implements were like. They were, however, real, and there definitely existed in a multitude of different kinds. One source states that the implements used for the Watanagashi rite alone numbered 200. The obvious question, then, is why require such a myriad of them? The rite of Watanagashi was to kidnap people through the demoning away, dissect them, and eat them. I believe the tools for dissection are restraining, but 200 of them is far too many. Generally, tools evolve in such a way as to reach a solution for a certain problem. Once you've reached the ultimate goal, that is, attained a certain level of efficiency, the tool's evolution normally stops there. Regardless, why would they have created so many different kinds? One of the cultural elements responsible for diversification over time is that of entertainment. Tools used for entertainment would evolve over time and branch out. Unlike normal tools, reaching the ultimate goal would be more of a dead end, and in searching for the next goal, they would split into many different subtypes. So then, perhaps it's not a stretch to suggest that these 200 pole-plus implements had some entertainment value. This is just a hypothesis, of course, but maybe the human dissection process was viewed as a type of entertainment. The three families of old would develop one new implement dissecting tool after another, and each was varied, novel, and attracted spectators to keep them from growing bored. It's not unimaginable. All of them have to be enshrined within that storehouse. There isn't much longer until the night of Watanagashi. Though its original intent has been lost, I will reveal the secret to the traditional ceremony night when a ritual storehouse. I can't restrain my excitement. Watanagashi cannot come soon enough. It's so crazy. Yeah, that's a very interesting logical step to tell you. So, like, normally if it's just pure function, you just kind of hone and craft until you get basically the perfect tool. Entertainment never stops. After the festival. Oof, I don't feel good. Last night, tensions in the police station were strained. In the silence, many of the staff members' eyes shifted back and forth between the clock and their telephones, counting the seconds in that stifled atmosphere. Kumagaya-kun burst in with a young guy trailing behind him.
Oi-san! こっちは検視入りました。じいさまもさっき到着です。俺もスタンバイ OK しました。このまま焼死の現場へ直行します。
熊ちゃん、ちょっと話がややこしくなりました。向こうは身元の判別が非常に困難な状態だそうです。
まさか、4年前のあれっすか？
いいえ、こんがりと。
Oh.
いい感じだそうで。
Oh gosh, what? He spoke in sportive tones, but the meaning behind his words were heavy. The staff gave a collective sigh.
頭のてっぺんから丸々？
バッチリ黒焦げだそうで。ああいう匂いってこもるんですよね。
That's not this year, though, is it?
ギフさん、かわいそうだな。
Cooked with no possessions, then discarded outside the prefecture. At worst, it would have taken a week for the body to be identified. The fact that they sniffed it out tonight was huge.
今、小宮山君たちが沖宮の歯科医を根こそぎ野襲してます。カルテで歯型照合するしかないでしょう。
Okay.
ごめん。誰かきつめのタバコ2箱ぐらい買ってきてくれません？
Or maybe that's Takano. That's what happened to her. The young guy answered an affirmation and darted out into the hallway.
今年は見事見つけましたね。ひょっとすると過去の失踪者もこんな感じで県外で殺されてたんすかね。
なら埋めればいいじゃないですか。重りつけて日本海でも。
でもどうして一人死んで一人消えるのがこれまでのパターンじゃないですか。
クマちゃん、仏は拘束なしでドラム缶の中でこんがりでしょ。見つかることを覚悟の上でです。
Oh yeah, that is weird.
じゃあつまり今年は消す気は初めからなかったってことっすか？
消す気がないってよりは、これはそれとは全く別のものでしょうね。消すどころか主張しているようにすら感じられますよ。
つまり、見せしめの意味があるってことっすか？
He folded his arms and then heaved a long and heavy sigh.
それをしないでやってくれりゃ、その線もあるんですがね。こんな遠くまで運んで焼いちゃったら、下手したらわかんないでしょう。見せしめにするなら、ひなみ沢の近くでやるべきなんですよ。殺したことを主張したいのに、場所は演出効果の確実じゃない遠方。主張したいのか隠したいのか。
Or maybe they didn't want it to be the actual target. So someone dies and someone gets vanished, but maybe what the plan was that the Tomataka-san was the killed and then Keiichi was going to be vanished. But they also realized that she, Takano, knew too much. And so they just eliminated her, but as a warning or as a celebration for something. I don't know. But that's the idea, is like, she was meant to not be the vanished person.
今年は何考えてるのかな、お社様は。
The telephone ring cut through the heavy silence. The staff member nearby snatched up the receiver.
おいさん、小宮山さんです。出ました。沖宮のデンタルクリニックで3年前に親知らずの治療をしてます。
カルテは？
レントゲン付きでバッチリと。
Good.
いやー、こんな明け方前に歯医者さんには申し訳ないな。クマちゃん、小宮山くんからカルテを受け取ったら、すぐに出発してください。
了解っす。課長です。夜分お疲れ様です。大石さん、遅くなって申し訳ない。状況は？
やっと面白くなってきたってどこですかね。
わお！
Okay. Interesting. Man, it seems like there's a lot more going on than it's implied in the last one. The last game, it implied he had, like, literally nothing to work with. But here, he's, like, finding bodies, like, and tying them to places. So, yeah, that's fetching crazy. All right, well, we're going to end things here because I need a break. And holy crap. I'm so glad I ended last time when I did. So glad. But that meant this episode was rough. So I hope you don't mind. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, enjoyed that is a bitter pill. I feel like I kind of shared all my theories basically for this episode. So it's not like I have much to add here. Just kind of the idea that, like, so far the most mysterious thing was the jumping sound that he couldn't seem to hear for whatever reason. Yeah, interesting. Well, let's see. Let's see how it all plays out. But I'm excited to see where it goes and what new secrets we're going to learn. But, like, it really feels like Team Colt is going to come out ahead in this because even if there are weird things happening that could be considered part of the curse, like, the evidence is absolutely stacking that all of this could be human design. It just makes more sense that way. So, yeah, I still am very much in Team Colt and human. So, yeah. I guess when you saw this story, like, what were your thoughts about it? Obviously, please keep it spoiler free. So if, like, you have tons of future information that actually, like, relates to it, like, you have to be careful what you're limiting to. But, like, I still want to hear from you and hear what you think of, at least of what I'm thinking, or, like, maybe, like, point out something I might have overlooked. Again, not too much though, because sometimes, like, reflecting back at a critical moment when it gets brought up could be a really fun part to watch. So it's kind of hard because, like, I want you to comment on stuff and leave your thoughts in there, but, like, I also understand that for a lot of you, they're probably just biting your fingernails trying to, like, not tell me things like that would spoil the future. So yeah, I guess I apologize for that. I hope you feel comfortable sharing something, even if it's just a bit of encouragement. But, you know, we'll make it through. Anyway, I'm gonna go lay down, breathe a little bit because I do not feel good. And, yeah, well, get to all this later. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed being here for the episode, especially if you're a patron and member. Your direct support is beyond words. I'm so grateful for you. But frankly, anybody who's here watching is super important and super helpful. And I'm so grateful for each and every one of you because you help bring a spice to this. I already would want to play these games. I already want to make content, but having your input and having your, like, your willingness to join me on this journey absolutely makes it all worth it in the end. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hope you enjoyed the other games that we've got coming up this week. Should be a lot of fun. And I'm grateful to be back into the swing of things. So until the next video, watching me up, see me next. I'll see you there.